Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Satchitananda Sarasvatindram Shankara Vedanta Sudhartha Vetaram Bhranti Kshayeka Niritam Mahantam Vande Yatindram Gurumadvitiyam. Friends, it's a pleasure to be able to speak today on a topic that's very close to my heart. Closest is Sri Swamiji, and the influence on Sri Swamiji of Sureśvara. When you read Swamiji's works, and there's some illustrious figures who were able to actually meet him in person, I never had that pleasure. I'll tell you a bit my journey. But when you read his writings, particularly his Sanskrit writings, you note the frequency with which, to make a point, Sri Swamiji will quote Vartika or a verse from Nishkarmi Siddhi. I think the reason he does that, and what I found, is there's a precision and clarity in Suresvara's works that, at least for me, has helped clarify many, many misconceptions. My background, I'm from North India, originally from Lucknow, from a family of classically trained musicians and dancers, belonging to Lucknow Gharana. I didn't have the voice, but I played tabla. My mother was a classically trained Kathak dancer, and I call my maternal grandfather, my Nana, my first guru. He taught me a love of Urdu poetry, Urdu shairi, and would tell me, "Beta, tumhe isme Bhagwan milega." Son, you'll find God in this poetry. And later in life, so that actually helped build my memory power. We would memorize verses until 2, 3 in the morning. We would do jugalbandi on verses. And later, I would often say a Sanskrit verse, and he'd give me the response in an Urdu verse, which was just wonderful. But he gave me that love of philosophy. Then at university, I was made the token expert by my friends in Hinduism, all things Hinduism. I could half answer their questions. I told my parents, this is not good enough. I need to mug up on what I say my tradition is. They gave me books that I read, various books, including the 8 Upanishads, the Ramakrishna publication, Chit Bhavananda's Bhagavad Gita, and his commentary, The Call of the Vedas by A.C. Bose. And I remember reading and saying there's something clearly here, but in other places, I think stuff's being lost in the translation. Through Urdu, I also speak German and French. I could tell there's something missing. So I casually said to my parents, I think the only way I'm going to learn this is if I study Sanskrit. And they took me at my word. And for my graduation present from Oxford, where I was an engineer, they got me 1 year's Sanskrit classes at the Advaita Vedanta Bhavan in London, which is, they did many great things for me, but that's one of the greatest gifts I think they gave me. In the very first lesson, I was lost to the language. This universe of expression just opened for me in that first lesson, understanding tapas, stop, burn. Are you standing on one foot for 20 years in the sun, or are you burning your ego? And how every act can be oriented to bringing you the knowledge to burn the ego. All of this, Himalaya, the temples of ice, they're not just mountains. It was just this incredible opening of my eyes. Chakshurut militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I felt it there with Dr. Nandakumara, my Sanskrit teacher, my dearest friend now, who runs the Bhavan. I found out he came from Mattur village, the Samskrita Grama, Sanskrit-speaking village. And then, after a year, the other good thing that happened, for me at least, is after 6 weeks, all the other students dropped out because they found it too hard. So I got one-on-one accelerated learning from Nanda. And then 1 year he said, okay, you've now learned Sanskrit, help me with the teaching. Around the same time, Krishna Shastri came from India, and we started running spoken Sanskrit camps for people, and really showed them how this is a living language. It's flowing through the blood of anyone born in India. And we started running those classes. And I remember sitting one evening in my apartment thinking, wouldn't it be lovely to study the Vedas? But I'm in London, there's no chance. So I then went to the Bhavan that Tuesday for a class on Valmiki Ramayana. And Nanda said, my elder brother's visiting from India. Oh, and by the way, he's a Veda scholar. I couldn't believe my luck. He was like, I've often heard when the student's ready, the guru appears. I thought, yeah, fair enough. He arrived and trained in the Vedic tradition of Mathur. And I cannot explain it to this day. Within the first 15 seconds, I was lost to him. There was some surrender connection. He took me under his wing. For 2 months, he taught me Veda mantras. I learned Rudram Chamakam, all the suktas, the Tiru Upanishad with him. He then left me a set of cassettes to continue my study. I then quit my job before going to business school, and I went to Bangalore. And I stayed with him in Bangalore, where they conducted my Upanayanam. I continued my Veda Adhyayanam, went to Mathur village, and then met somebody that many of you know here, Svāmī Saccidānandendra Sarasvatī, Ashwatha in his Purva Ashrama. And I studied my Shankara Bhashyam with him, and he introduced me to Sri Swamiji and Sri Swamiji's works. And maybe it's the scientist in me. The clarity of thought just hit me, pierced me right here. And then I knew, even if I wanted to stop, I couldn't stop my studies and continued. And that's when I really started seeing, I memorized Adhyasa Bhashya. For me, it's a Shruti. I recite it like a Shruti text. Yushmadas Pratyaya Gocharayo Vishayino Tamah Prakashavat Viruddha Swabhavayo. One day I'll learn the whole Bhashyam of the Chatussutri. Maybe that's when I stop my day job. But, Veda taught me these words have to flow within you. That's how you find the connections. If a teacher says we're now going to discuss the first mantra of the fourth kanda of Taittiriya Samhita, you don't want to go, hang on, let me find it in a book. Immediate recall. Yunjana Prathamam Manastattaya Savita Dhiyaha, the first ancient verses about yoga, the joining of mind to body and soul and bringing you present into the yajna. So external yajna becomes internal. If that's not here, you have to scramble for it in the book. So this really connected with me. And I think through Swamiji, I got introduced to Sureśvara Acharya's works. I have the full Brihadaranika Bhashyam at home, Avartika at home, and just assiduously got everything. And every time I would meet Ashwatha and his brothers, we would discuss, obviously, Swamiji's teachings, but then often I would just highlight a particular verse that I had seen in the Vartika for discussion. We're trying to organize a Vartika Parayanam in the village at some point, so that people hear these wonderful Vartikas. And Suresvara, I think, has been seen as very impenetrable for many people. Brihadaranika Bhashya Vartika has 12,000 verses. It's half the length of the Ramayana, right? So we go, oh my God. And there's some very technical sections. If you want to learn about the ancient Vedanta schools, Bhratara Prapancha and others, go to Suresvara. The most extensive description of Vastatraya you find in the Vartikas. But people, it seems a little very inaccessible. So I try and help people understand through just some of the simple verses how they can open the door into Suresvara, and then guide them to Swamiji, who lays it out beautifully. The end of his Klesha Paharini, if anyone has ever had a look at it, he has an index verse of Brihadaranika Vartika verses he's quoted, or the Vartika verses he's quoted. So he puts them in a beautiful context. And of course, in his great work, Vedanta Prakya Pratyabhijna, he's got a lovely chapter on Suresvara. And I think where Suresvara for me was very helpful was to cut through the whole Moola Vidya debate and this notion of Nijanani. Nahi Vedanta Siddhante Hyagyata Atma Tirekataha. The only cause of this world, Sankhyanam Siddhante Labhyate Karanantaram, is the fact that the Atman is unknown. We don't know Atman. There's this innate sense of, again, behind there, this mixing of what, real and unreal. And why is that? Because of avicharita siddha. It's just lack of critical reflection. And you see in his verses the Katopanishad verse, Paranchi khani vyatranat swayambhuho tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman. We are naturally disposed to look outside of ourselves. So that's why we look there. Kaschit dhiraha, the occasional wise person, pratyagatmanam ekshati, seeking the inner self. Avritta chakshu, turns the eye within, amritattam icchan, searching for immortality. So I think, and that clarifying that that's a simple misconception, Sureśvara says, mithya jnanam anatmabham moha ityupadishyate. It's just a moha, nothing else. And so many times the way he uses mithya jnana, he talks about mithyavabodha. Ajnanam, he's very precise again. Ajnanameva mithyadhihi. How can you confuse ajnana with anything other than wrong notion when it's so clearly put? And this is Suresvara. And if you follow that thread, I think it does clear a lot of misconceptions that we have this innate, timeless kind of misconception. And the sadhana and the disciplines of our Shastra create those inner conditions for knowledge, helping us turn the eye within. So that when we truly hear Tattvamasi, the knowledge dawns. If you try and teach, quantum entanglement to a 5-year-old, it doesn't go very well because the inner conditions of knowledge have not been created, right? And so this is, just understanding how our life is this sadhana of living a life full of love, service, compassion, to live a life of giving versus taking, equipping ourselves with the knowledge as to who we really are, so that knowledge may accrue, and creating those inner conditions is so clear in Suresvara. And that's why I believe Shankara and Suresvara really are not interested in delving into the inner workings and the nature of avidya, because the search is for Brahmagyanam. It's not a mistake that the Brahma Sutram starts with Athato or Brahma Jigyasa, now and inquiring to Brahman. It doesn't start with Athato Jnana Jigyasa, Athato Avidya Jigyasa. It doesn't start there at all, right? It starts into Brahman. So that's where the focus should be. And to remove those misconceptions, because when misconceptions have gone, then avidya kalpita bheda nivritti paratvat shastrasya, Shankara says. That's the purpose of Shastra, is to remove the differences caused by, fashioned by our ignorance here. And that's why Suresvara is really not interested in delving into the whys and wherefores of avidya. And the two, people may know this. Avidyavan avidyantam nanirupayatam kshamaha. That one who is imbued by ignorance cannot analyze that ignorance. So there's no point. Second, the famous Nishkarmi Siddhi that I love, Seyam Bhrantihi Niralamba. This Bhranti, confusion, is Niralamba, without foundation. Sarvanyaya Virodhini. It is not accessible to Nyaya. Sahate navicharam sa. It doesn't brook that kind of inquiry. Tamo yadvad divakaram. Like shining a light in darkness. Now, many people take this as nirvachaniyata. I know. I think that's not what he's saying at all. He's saying, why waste your time there? Get the knowledge. There's an innate, loka vyavahara that you're subject to, having been born in human form. Recognize that you're beyond the human form. And I think does the jnani see the body? That was such a good discussion, right? There's a point where you have to transcend some of your misconceptions that are given because we look at the world through the locus of an ignorant observer. But so very clear, Suresvara discusses these points in his writings. And and therefore helps then also put in context. He is clearly a master of the Anvaya Vyatireka Tarka, of the technique and the discipline of understanding what continues and what is different. And obviously related Adhyaropa Apavada, you see that in all of his writings. Some of his verses echo Adhyasabhashyam very clearly. And you see that in his verses on the analysis of Avasthatraya in the Vartika. How does that verse go? Supta prabuddhi ityekam vikalpa esha bhutanam ratya. I need to look it up, the exact one. Give me 1 second. So I try and carry most of his Vartikas in my head, but sometimes they get confused. Supta prabuddha ityevam swapnam pashyati cheti yaha vikalpa esha bhutanam avidya ratri shayinam. Just to talk of the notion of the states means you're looking at it from a standpoint of ignorance. And why is there no avidya in deep sleep? Because there's no mind to manifest it. It's very simple. But the moment you invoke a state, you're in avidya kshetram. And the notion of I awoke, I slept deeply, avidya ratri shayinam. That doesn't mean there's some mystical Shakti sitting there in deep sleep. You're just seeing your motion through the universe, through these artificial states, from the locus of an ignorant observer. Very simple. And no rocket science, as we say. And then he gives this, this beautiful kind of steps of how to create those inner conditions. I often, Shankara Suresvara is thought of as just highly intellectual, highly dry. It's not true. I think he links how one lives one's life to that final realization very well and expands out Shankara's sadhana chatushtaya in Nishkarma Siddhi 152, which our Swamiji called sadhana sopana krama. I love that description, the steps on the ladder of sadhana. And what does Sureśvara say there? Nitya karmanushthanat dharmotpattihi. By following your duties, a sense of dharma arises in you. A discipline, a mental discipline. I often talk about this, by the way, when I run Western seminars for business folks and with leadership. The power of mind training, the power of being present as and mindful as a leader. I'll often say in a group, how many of you go to the gym, every week? Many people put their hands up, less so in an Indian audience. Then I ask, how many go to the gym of the mind? Very few put their hand up. And these nitya karmas, this is a discipline to create that steadfast, we'll come on to it, that steadfastness of mind. Every time you do your havan, or you do your puja, what are you doing? You're giving, you're practicing giving. You're inculcating that sense of giving in life. You're putting a discipline. So nitya karmanusthana dharmotpattehe papahani. You're naturally drawn to right action and not wrong action. Tatashchitta shuddhi. Then comes clarity of mind and thought. And when there's clarity of vision of what the world is, tataha samsara yathatmya avabodha. Then you see the world for what it is. If you're clear in mind and thought, you see the world as ephemeral and you seek the permanent behind it and you lose your attachment for that which comes and goes. So then he says, tato vairagyam. That's when vairagya comes. And when vairagya comes, dispassion for that which is ephemeral, it then arises desire for the eternal. Tato mumukshatvam, he says. And once that desire, the mumukshutva comes, tatas tadupaya paryeshanam, then you seek the means for that. And then tataha sarva karma tat sadhana sanyasaha. And then the sadhanas build in you to that sense of tyaga lakshana. Sarvas sanyasta karmaiva tasmad atmadhyo janihi. Sarva karma nirasena jnanat kaivalya muchyate. Sureśvara says, this tyaga lakshana is one of those signs that the inner conditions are ripening for knowledge. Then you get tato yoga abhyasaha. Then comes the yoga, and here, as Swamiji explains, is meant the adhyatma yoga. Yached vangmanasi pragya tad yached jnana atmani jnanam atmani mahati yached tad yached chanta atmani, the turning of the I within. There was a great student of Sri Ramana Maharshi, Ganapati Shastri, who was a great Sanskrit scholar, who composed a work, Uma Sahasram. He summarized Ramana Maharshi's way, discipline, in a very simple Sanskrit. Ahamiti kutaha ayati iti chintayan. When one reflects on the notion of who I am, udayasthale liyate, and it merges into the source of where the notion of I comes, tadeva tapaha, that is tapaha. This turning, adhyatma yoga, this turning of the eyes with kaschid dhira pratyagatmanam ekshate. This is what Sureśvara is talking about, because tataha chittasya pratyak pravanata, then the mind, the eye turns within. And the inner, one perceives the whole universe is not outside but within and around, and we are that. So that when you hear tataha tattvamasi adivakyartha parigyanam, then you understand tattvamasi, because Shruti is the way for knowledge to accrue in the end, when the conditions have been created, nanyatha. That's at that point, that throws your experience into a different orbit that was always there. And then tataha avidyochedaha, then your avidya is cut. Tataha cha swatmani eva avasthanam, then you rest in your true self that has always been. And elsewhere, Sureśvara says, tattvamasya vakyotha samyak dhi janma matrataha avidya sahakaryena nasidasti na vidyati. At that point, the janma matrataha, the moment of hearing tattvamasi, for such a person, avidya and its effects, na asid, asti, na vidyati, have never existed, never was, never will be. So there's this beautiful clarity I find in Sureśvara's teaching that obviously appealed to Sri Swamiji. Swamiji wrote a work, The Essential Gaudapada. There is a work, The Essential Suresvara. He has written, I think, in Kannada. I've been trying to find ways of how we can get this translated and published into English. I think it would be a great service for the world. My Kannada is not good enough to translate. If it was a Sanskrit work, I would have done it. But for anyone who listens to this, who wants to help us, I know the work was started at the Karyalaya. Maybe someone has an update. But I would love to see how we could bring Sri Swamiji's Essential Suresvara to a wider audience. So I hope that's been a helpful, quick tour of Suresvara. I had a very simple goal with this talk, is if one person in this or who listens to this wants to deepen their study in Advaita Vedanta, then I've succeeded. If another person beyond that wants to start delving into Sri Swamiji's works, that's a silver medal. And if someone wants to delve into Suresvaracharya's works, I would deem that the gold medal is earned from this talk. So with that, I thank you all very much for listening. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you very much. Would you have time for a couple of questions? It was an amazing talk.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Iraji, for your comments, any questions?
Well, first, thank you for that wonderful talk. It's very obvious how familiar you are with the literature. This, when we talk about the Vartikas, like you said, 12,000 verses. I don't know if you were referring to the Brihadaranyaka.
Brihadaranyaka. Yeah, that's right.
And then we have the whole Taittiriya,
Exactly.
which is, I don't know how big, but so there was some gentlemen, some scholars from Pune, a Japanese guy and an Indian scholar who
Hino and
started.
KP Jog. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think their translations were horrible, if I'm not mistaken. But at least they made an attempt. If you don't
That's
know
right.
Sanskrit, there was nothing really. And just one kind of interesting point, if I might bring it up, which
Please.
was you pointed out, Swamiji points out, Swāmī Saccidānandendra, that the style um, of the Brihadaranyaka and the Taittiriya is different than the
Sutra.
Sutra Bhashya.
Yes.
Iti chait, these expressions that we don't find, and some other things about prana being all pervasive or not being. And so he said, um, I'll leave it up to future scholars to determine this point. But I don't know if it's been determined because if Suresvara never really met Sutra Bhashyakara, the one who wrote, if that's not his guru, it's then there's two Shankaracharyas that, and what are the implications of that? I'm not sure, but it's an interesting topic to ponder about. If you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, that's a great point. And there are a couple of points I would make. In some ways, if it was shown there were different authors, in my view, it strengthens the tradition that shows that there's this unbroken line where we even see, Shankara quotes prior teachers, Siddhantu Nivartakatvat, right? You go to the end of Chatusutri, Anveshta Vyatma Vijnanat, Prak Pramatratvamatmana Vishtasyat Pramataiva, Papma Doshati Varjitaha. Those three verses that really cover the whole tradition from an ancient source. And that we're not resting on one man. There's a very analogous debate happening and it's very topical because a film is coming out on the Odyssey by Christopher Nolan. Was Homer one person or many people? And for what happened, it was I think an American a linguist had gone to Central Europe. He somehow missed India, otherwise he'd have seen it immediately, and noticed in Central Europe these bards, rhapsodes, who were reciting from memory ancient poetry and repeated lines to help them memorize. And he saw the same was in Homer. So was there one Homer? Were there different Homers? And for me, we have the Odyssey, we have the work, and that's what counts more so. And if our tradition is this unbroken line of teachers with a consistent teaching, that's not a problem for me, frankly. So, in our tradition, we also have the example of Vyasa. Now, it's said that Vyasa wrote the Mahabharata, all the Puranas. Some say he wrote the Vedas, even though we have the Rishi. Well, what does Vyasa mean? Vi us, right? Us, asyati, to throw. Vi into separate sections, to compile. It's a generic term for an arranger, a compiler. There could have been many Vyasas. It's fine. You don't have to die on the sword. It's just this one. And I see this debate in some of the more orthodox, I don't want to use the word orthodox, but some of the more strident Hindutva folks. There's this one Vyasa, there's one this, and and again, Swamiji, the content beats everything. So Kalidasa says at the start of his Malika Mitra when he was a young poet, a verse that applies everywhere, that Purana mityeva nasadu sarvam, just because something is old doesn't mean it's good. Na chapi kavyam navadyavadyam, you should not also denigrate a work because it's new. Santaf parikshan yantarat bhajante. The wise really assess the metal of the teaching. Moodaha paripartayane yabuddhihi. Fools are just led by what others have said. Test the metal of the teaching, and if it's consistent, follow that. Will we really know who wrote something 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago? We have some evidence. We know there was a Shankaracharya. The fact that there were many wise people. I mean, I have an Ashwatha. That's where I go for my gyan. There's another Swamiji in France, you may not know, called Swāmī Yogananda Sarasvatī, a Frenchman, who was the first Westerner to take traditional sannyasa back in the 70s at the age of 17. He was the Swami who brought to Europe the Sanskrit film on Shankaracharya. I met him for the first time in Geneva, and he was going to talk on Bhagavad Gita. And he starts his talk. This is how he started his talk. Never met him before. Adhyaro pabhavadabhyam nishprapancham prapanchate. Then he goes, before one studies the Shastra, one must understand the nature of confusion, which is the Adhyasa Bhashyam. Let me tell you about Adhyasa Bhashyam. I said, hang on a minute. This French Swami, he must know Shri Swamiji. I go and meet him. He studied under some Swamis in South India. He knew of Swamiji, but his training came from a different side. But and he has translated into French, for the French audience, various stotras. I think he's even done Vedanta Bala Bodhini. He's a composer, he's a singer of Sanskrit stotras. He composed a Sri Vyasa Ashtotra Shatanama, 108 names of Vyasa. He composed that for Guru Purnima. He composed shlokas for my two daughters when they got married, when I conducted their weddings. And he didn't grow up in Holy Narsipur. So there is some unifying teaching that if one gets connected to it, it makes me very happy. So if I can't get hold of the gurus in Mathur, I go to Swami Yogananda in France, and I ask him.
There are a lot of Moola Vidyavadins who look to Suresvara for support of their views. They constantly quote from the Vartikas and even Naishkarmya Siddhi. It's I don't know if they're just cherry picking verses or if they've gone through it and just have a completely different perspective.
Yeah, well, I think there are two reasons for that. One is you probably know Sureśvara does use the phrase Moola Jnana a couple of times. There's some famous verses that he has that talk about this. And avidya pratate mauli, he talks about. But when you read that carefully, Sureśvara is talking about something that is avidya kalpita. Nothing else. So, you have to read his verses very carefully, for sure. So I'm just trying to, look at a couple of things if I can find them real time. If not, I can share them with folks later. I've wanted to write a short article on those specific verses where he uses the phrase Moola Jnana, and you shouldn't be afraid of it, because when you understand what does he really say about avidya navedmiti, it's he's talking about it in the sense of asya anartha hetu of prahana, anartha hetu. He's talking about it as a sense, as a root, as it's talked about in Adhyasa Bhashyam. No other. Another reason is Swāmī Vidyaranya ji, who wrote Panchadashi and so on, where he has actually also, it's a mistake to say that those of the Orthodox tradition did not know about Adhyaropa Avavada, because that he did. There are a couple of examples, just I'll give you from Vidyaranya's work. Atma va idamityado paroksham brahma lakshitam adhyaropa avavada bhyam pragyanam brahma darshitam, he says in Panchadashi. There is another work that he has written, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad Vartika Sara. So Vidyaranya wrote his own gloss on the Vartikas. If the Vartikas was 12,000 verses, imagine how big it. I have it at home. It's 5 volumes, and he has in there, Adhyaropa Pavadabhyam Madhukandam Parvartate Adhyaropya Tritiyena Chaturthena Topapadyate. So basically, Topodyate. So in Madhukanda, the Adhyaropa is in the 3rd chapter, and the Apavada is in the 4th. So we have to be careful. We say, these guys don't understand Upadhyāropa. I would argue the way it's applied is not the way Swamiji applies it. That's a different point, right? But when you read his Vartikasara, he infuses this view and takes the notion of Najanami as that root Moola Vidya. Swamiji has said something very important in Vedanta Prakya Pratyabhijna, if you've read it, when he talks about Vivarana, where there's a point in the way Vivaranacharya uses the phrase kalpanikatvat because of its imagined nature for the avidya he's describing. And he says in there in the Sanskrit that if people were to really understand what this means, there'd be no confusion. So, I think if it's of interest, I will write this article. But I'll be honest, I've got to a point in my own sadhana where getting to the dialectics of Moola Vidya versus others, I'd rather help people stay on their sadhana and fill their hearts with love and joy and compassion. It's not an accident, and this is another important point I wanted to bring up. It's not an accident that Swamiji writes on Bhakti Chandrika that Sri Ram, Jai Ram was very close to his heart. Vina jnanam kuto bhaktihi, vina bhaktim kutascha tat. Without knowledge, where does bhakti come? Without bhakti, where does that come? Our Lord, he quotes, our Lord Sarva Shastrani Vicharya cha punah punaha from Ashtavakra Gita, I think. Idam ekam sunishpannam dhyeyo narayana sada. Fill your heart with contemplation on the Supreme. Once you've churned all the Shastras and done all your Navyana and all Alodya Sarva Shastrani, Vicharya cha punah and broken your head against all the analytics. Idam ekam sunishpannam. This one truth is dhyeyo narayana sada. Just absorb yourself in contemplation of the divine in all of us. Asupte ramrate kalam nayed vedanta chintaya. Let's focus people's energy on that and help them lift the world. As I say often, if you read the Gita, the message is live your life as a yajna. Live your life as a sacred offering to a higher purpose. In the business world, I say to people that can be oriented towards the divine. It could be for a higher purpose for your organization beyond profit. Many of the greatest leaders that we've had in the 20th century, Matsushita, great Japanese leader who built JVC and National Panasonic. After the war, what mission did he give his organization? We're going to rebuild our country. He didn't say we're going to improve shareholder value. We're going to rebuild our country. And his basic thought process was businesses are a force for good in society. That's a higher purpose. Cipla, I was the CEO of a company founded by somebody who followed Mahatma Gandhi, where Gandhi said to him, improve the health of the nation, the profits will follow. So people at Cipla feel they're doing Gandhi's work. That's dedicating yourself to a higher purpose. One of the great Japanese businessmen was Inamuri-san, who set up the printer company Kyocera. He retired after being very successful and very humble. He wrote a book of his principles in life, which you could read as a Zen Buddhist work or a Vedantic work, if you're ever able to get a copy. At his retirement, the journal asked, "What are you going to do next?" And he says, "I'm going to become a Buddhist monk." There was silence in the room. The journalist said, "Quite a career change." And this is what he said. He said, "If job of leader done well, no different from job of Buddhist monk. Thank you very much." He left. Many years later, Japan Airlines is in trouble. Who do the Japanese government call to turn around Japan Airlines? Inamori-san. They called him out of retirement as a Buddhist monk. He would show up in his monk robes. And in his interview, he said, "There's no secret. I just want to make the people happy." Now, there's a lot behind what he did, right? But you find just this, that way of living a life infused with love, compassion, and service naturally takes you to a path of knowledge. And I think that's what Swamiji understood, which is why one of my favorite quotes from Gandhi that I often share with people that links that inner journey of knowledge to a life of service and a life of leadership is the best way to find yourself. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. That best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. I think it's a beautiful kind of way of bringing together your spiritual journey with your the role of leader as one who serves as opposed to demands. And I think we need more of that in the world today. So, sorry, I went a bit off topic from Moola Vidya, but hopefully
it's great. I mean, you're already on the way to gold here. Thomas Hishiryōji is already did a first translation from. He's an expert in translation from language X to language Y. He's done the essential Sureśvara. He put it on the chat. This is, of course, an initial version. It has to be verified. I know pretty good Kannada, and we'll work with Manjushri and APK, and then we'll try and get it.
Fantastic. Can somebody send that to me outside of the chat so I don't lose it?
Yeah.
Because I think we should keep the Sanskrit verses and then the English so that people can refer to the exact Sanskrit verses as well at the same time. But I'm very happy to see that. Thank you.
Rameshamji, do you have any questions? Rameshamji, as you know, is a great sadhaka and an expert who hangs out with us. We hang out. So,
Namaste ji, no, thank you very much.
Any questions, Ramesham?
No questions at this time. Thank you. And thanks to Dr. Subhanu Saxena also.
I'm just a Mr. I'm not a doctor, please. I'm just call me Subhanu. I was named by mistake when I was born. One of the priest said, "Su," it should be there, auspicious. Now, because we're Lucknow Urdu speakers, my parents thought Subhan from Subhanallah. At my naming ceremony, the priest went Subhanu and was like, "Oh, okay, it's done." Turns out Subhanu is one of Krishna's sons from Satyabhama, Bhanu, son, and Su, auspicious sun, bright, shining. So, no, Mr. I'm just Subhanu.
No, I thought about
I am a sadhaka, like you.
The connection to Subhanallah, and then, of course, you're from Lucknow. So we have Sophia Ji. Sophia Ji, you have any questions?
No, just enjoying every word falling on my ears.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm really sorry to, disturb you from your meetings and everything else. And
hopefully you were recorded at this time.
Yes, we have recorded it and double recording. Okay. So
and we'll post it on the Bhavan's website if someone can send it.
We'll edit and then send it to you in a few days.
Fantastic.
And we really appreciate it. And then down the road for the rest of the way, I've asked Subhanu Ji to also give a lecture on Vedanta and Ghalib and Ghalib. So we'll do that sometime towards the later part of the summer. We'll do some advertisement and etc. and get people from various parts of the world who are maybe interested, who never heard of Vedanta, but who know Sufism and Ghalib and
Yes, I'll give a little teaser that one of Ghalib's preceptors had, who a Persian poet, had a copy of Yoga Vasishtha. I'll just leave that little teaser for people.
Yeah. It's known, the Yoga Vasishtha translation in Arabic.
Yes. So,
is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And Rameshamji is an expert on Yoga Vasishtha. So he's actually written books on it.
Yes, and look, even though that's Jnana Karma Samuccaya, where you take your inspiration, you take it, as the Rig Veda says, Ano Bhadra Kratavo Yanto Vishwataha, let noble thoughts come to us from every side. I look forward to it. Thank you, everybody, for patiently listening, and look forward to the next satsang.
Pleasure to be here, sir. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, all of you, bye-bye. See ya.
Bye.
Yeah. I'll send you my recording.